Lesson 4.5, graphing sine and cosine functions. I'm going to do this on this board because it'll be a little bit bigger. If you want to graph y equals the sine of x, you're going to just make an xy table. I'm picking values for x. Remember, x is the angle measure. So I'm saying a turn of 0 radians, a turn of pi over 2 radians, a turn of pi radians, a turn of 3 pi over 2 radians, and a turn of 2 pi radians. We'll start with that. And so I'm going to make my graph. And so I've got pi over 2, which is also 90 degrees, pi, which is 180, 3 pi over 2, which is 270 degrees, 2 pi, which is 360 degrees. I also put in some negative numbers for the clockwise turns. Now I'm going to use the unit circle. And you have to remember that the sine is the y coordinate. So the sine of 0 is 0. So I'm going to plug that in here. The sine of 0 is 0. Plot that right here. Next, we're going to look for pi over 2. Pi over 2 is 90 degrees. The sine is 1. It's the y coordinate. So the sine of pi over 2 is 1. And so I'm going to have to label 1 on my y-axis. The sine of pi over 2 is 1. And then the next one I want is the sine of pi. So go over to your unit circle. Pi is a half turn, 180 degrees. The sine is 0 again. So this is 0. So this is back at 0. And then 3 pi over 2, that's 270 degrees. That's here. The sine is -1. And then 2 pi. So 2 pi is 1 complete revolution. So you're back to where you started from. So that's why I'm going to stop there. So that's 0. And so see, that's why I stopped here. So we're going to say the period of the sine of x is 2 pi because it's 1 complete revolution. And if I keep going, it's just going to repeat itself. So let me plot the points. 3 pi over 2, that was at -1. So that's here. And then 2 pi was at 0. So this is going to be a curve that looks like this. This isn't completely accurate. -1 is probably up a little bit higher. So there's that. So this is 1 complete cycle of sine. So you could keep going and you could keep labeling, like this is 3 pi over 2, so this would be 2 pi over, or 2 pi, which is 4 pi over 2. This would be 5 pi over 2, 6 pi over 2, which is 3 pi. And it's going to keep doing the same thing. So it goes up, down, up. It's going to go up again, and then it's going to go down again. And then the negative values are the clockwise turns. So here you are. If you turn negative pi over 2, you're at -1. So negative pi over 2 is at -1. Negative pi would turn clockwise to here, would be back at 0. So we can go like this. Okay, so that gives you a nice curve for y equals the sine of x. And here is 1 complete cycle of the sine of x. And that is going to keep repeating itself if you keep going. We're going to use this. This is going to be referred to as the parent function. We will use it to graph other variations of the sine of x in our next video.